Night, trying to get everything set here. I thought it would have been all set from last night, but you know how that goes. Let me get on here and make sure we're actually live everywhere, because sometimes we're not. Let's check Rumble first. If I can find me. Would help if I had my readers on, but I never know where they are. Okay, here we go. Let's make sure we're live on Rumble. We are. Awesome. Mute that. And let's make sure we're good on YouTube. Sorry, guys. It's a little bit of jockeying in the beginning, since you can't go direct from YouTube until you have like 20 million people or something. I don't know what the number is. And looks like we're live here too. Awesome. All right, let me get both screens up here. Hello, Paul. How are you? Goodness, you've been on my mind. Let me move my screens over here. Not meaning to be so distracted. Oh, stop. I don't want the whole screen to be that way. I guess I don't need to. I'm so used to having to bring up, both screens, because the Rumble chat doesn't show on the regular screen. So you have to kind of have both of them up for some reason. I don't know why. Turn that off. There we go. All right. How is everybody tonight? Let me move us over here, get our chat up, and make sure we're good to go. Chat. There we go. All right. Good. Your family is there. Good. Good. I'm so glad. I figured people would come down, but just wanted to make sure. Get our little ticker going there. And then I think we're good. All right. Yes, everybody here has been praying for you since we read your last message. And so sorry that, this has been a hard holiday for you. It's always hard when you lose somebody around the holidays. We lost my mother-in-law on Christmas Eve. And so Christmas Eve, I can't remember if it was Christmas Eve early in the morning or if it was Christmas Day early in the morning, but it was tough because she was just an incredible human being. I mean, if everybody had just a little bit of Mary Melba Wittbrodt in them, they'd be better off, because she was pretty awesome. Hello, Monica. Welcome. Got some people watching from Facebook. And I hope you guys had a good holiday. If you haven't watched me since the holiday, I'm out in the RV. No, Don hasn't put me out. What is with the hair today? It's all crazy. Don hasn't put me out. He's been working on the studio, as you know, or maybe you don't. He's been working on the studio, and hi AJ. It's no. It's Paul. Paul lost his wife over the holiday. My mother-in-law passed years ago. But Don was working on the office, and he got into the drywall. There was a weak spot, and so he, started investigating. You know how that goes, and found that there was some termite damage that looks like it's old, but of course now he is like OCD, tearing up the walls to try to figure out where it ends, and I can't deal with all that dust. So I'm down in the RV, which may sound like a terrible predicament, but it's not. Paul, as you know, they're very, very comfortable. I've got a big old, I think it's a queen or a full-size bed back there, and the sofa and the television. And I did a little tour last night. So if you haven't, it's not much of a tour, but if you go to the end of the Rumble video from last night, there's a little tour of the thing. I need to do one in daylight so you guys can actually see better what's going on. But it's been a little cold. We've got the space heater going and all that kind of stuff. So pretty comfortable, but I hope you guys had a good holiday. I know, Paul, yours has been tough, but I'm glad your family's there with you. And I'm so pleased to see you tonight. I got a bunch of emails over the holidays. People reaching out from Idaho, leaving for Kansas by Monday to get DD 214 for wife's burial. Okay, so you're not in Texas. I wasn't sure where you were. But we had a good holiday. It was busy. The kids came down, and we did our big Christmas on Friday the 30th. because that's when my daughter and her kids could get down, and I ended up catching COVID. And so I was down for all last week, and I've mostly got my voice back, so that's good. Hello, Miss Bender. Hello, John. And so I was excited to see you guys. Like I said, I've gotten a bunch of emails, and a bunch of other interesting things have come up if you didn't watch last night. I've got an interview supposed to be coming up tomorrow, a talk that I'm supposed to be doing for the Asheville, I can't think of the name of the group, but I've not gotten anything from them. So if you're from there and you're still, if you're from there and you're watching, you need to send me an email, because I have no way to connect with you to do the talk tomorrow. I've got on January 29th, I've got a meeting coming up. It's like a planning meeting for a documentary that's being done in Florida. Hopefully I'll get to fly down and be a part of that. And then I've got an interview with the Extraordinary People podcast. I think that's in March. And I spoke with Pastor John Burke's wife a couple days ago, and she sent me the proof for the chapter that I'm in. And so I've got some corrections to make on that. And he's writing a book called, I think, Finding God. I think the first one was Finding Heaven. Maybe this one's Finding God. I can't remember. But anyway, not sure when that's coming out, but I'll keep you up on that. Liz says, I have a friend in Lexington. She said y'all were supposed to get snow yesterday. We did. It's just a dusting. You know, it's funny. People in Kentucky get real excited about snow, but I'm from Michigan, so it would take a lot to shock me. But it's been cold, like really, really cold. It was nice all week, and then, you know, it's the last couple days it's been in the 30s, but before that it was in the 50s, so I feel bad complaining. But how are you guys? How was your holiday? Did you get to see family? We know Paul's suffering from the loss of his wife, and so of course, you know, you're in our prayers, my friend. And you know, I know a lot of people ended up getting sick, coming down with flu or COVID or you know, whatever other crud is going around. So if you're trying to get better, my prayers are with you in that. I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about finding your power. I think this time of year, maybe it's just me, but this time of year for me is difficult. You know, it's kind of that, you know, Christmas is over, and life is getting back to, you know, its normal pace, I guess. And you've got this time, this gap between now and spring that always to me seemed endless, especially when I was a kid. Even though I like the snow, there's that time in Michigan, you know, kind of from February until it gets warm in, you know, May. And it's just, I always called it dirt season, because there's snow that used to be pretty in January, but now it's just all muddy and dirty. And I just always felt like that seemed like a really hopeless time of year. Like you know, the weather was never going to break and spring was never going to come. And, and I think life can be like that. You know, you get kind of in this winter and you feel, you know, just kind of spiritually parched, you know, dry. And, you know, all those, you've kind of made it through that big holiday time and with family and everything. And then that's it. Like, what's next is spring. That's kind of for us, you know, our next birthday is in the spring, and, you know, and then they all kind of hit in the summer. But I was just thinking about how it can just feel like you're kind of captive this time of year. And like you don't have really much power to change anything, because you're just kind of stuck until spring. And it always has been kind of an emotionally tough time of year for me, not for any particular reason other than I think the lack of sunlight. I wouldn't mind the cold weather so much if the sun would just come out. But it tends to be really gloomy in Kentucky this time of year and for the next couple of months. And so it's always a time that I kind of struggle emotionally with, just feeling kind of down and like nothing is, you know, there's so little excitement. You're just kind of in this dormant period. And so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about how do you keep, you know, that energy and that pace and get over the kind of letdown. I don't know if that happens for you guys. Shout out if it does. Do you have that time? I've had it ever since I was a little girl, that time after all the presents are open and everybody's gone home and everything. And I always hated to open the presents in a way, because once it was done, you know, and it just felt like this kind of letdown. And not because I didn't get what I wanted or anything like that, but just, you know, that celebratory feeling and the feeling of having family close and everything. And it seems like it, you know, it built up so quick and then it's just gone. And then, you know, that's it till next year. And so I always struggle with this time of year, and I wonder if other people do. I know my husband struggles. because we lost his mom Christmas Eve 6 years ago. And then 5 years ago, we lost his dad right around Thanksgiving. And so this is always a hard time of year for him. And so I just think that's probably true, especially with Paul being here with us tonight. That's got to be, yeah, emotionally hungover is a good, just feeling like you're dragging through. That's a really good description, Liz. I like that. AJ says the winters are very long here in Minnesota. Oh, bless your heart. AJ, just move. Give up. Don't stay there. My sister lived in Minnesota for a while and lives in Wisconsin now, and I don't know how she like lives. I couldn't, because it gets cold there in September, and it gets kind of warm in June. We visited one time, and I think we were there right around the 4th of July, and they had their pool open, and it is still cold in Wisconsin and at the 4th of July just before. And I remember my nephew getting in the pool and getting out and being blue, and I'm like, it is too cold to be swimming. It's a little cold at the beginning of June, even here in Kentucky, to like get out in the lake. But yeah, I kind of know what you're talking about. In Wisconsin, they're very friendly. Minnesota's really friendly too. I was kind of surprised by that. But I mean, they call it Minnesota nice, but Wisconsin's crazy friendly. And my sister kind of has an alley that she shares with her neighbors, and they get their fire pits going, and they'll all go and sit outside and are in and out of each other's houses drinking coffee and stuff. I would die. I'd freeze to death. I couldn't do it. But it just seems like, that'd be cool if we had that, if we had this where we kind of wandered back and forth between our neighbors' houses and we all hung out in the evenings. But it seems like we don't do that so much anymore. I know when, we were kids, my mom was kind of friends with all the people in the neighborhood, and here everybody's kind of got their own life. I've lived lots of places. I would say Louisiana is probably the most friendly place I've lived. I would say Tennessee was probably the least, shockingly. We were in the Knoxville area. They're not mean people. They're just not real friendly, neighborly. Michigan's okay. I can't really judge because I lived there so much of my life. So, people, it's a little easier. Where else have we lived? Kansas is okay. Missouri, not so much. Where else? Kansas, Missouri, Kentucky, Illinois. People were pretty friendly in Illinois. Michigan, Tennessee, Illinois, Kansas, New Hampshire. The adults were really friendly. I found teenagers to be incredibly mean when I lived there, but I was a teenager. Yeah, is it friendly there where you're at? You're in Mississippi. Is that Mississippi or? Yeah, that's Mississippi. But yeah, Louisiana was really, really friendly. People are crazy friendly there, if you can stand to get out in the humidity, but the winters are nice. But I just was kind of struggling with that today. I was watching it be winter, and I'm thinking, oh, we're just at the beginning of it. We've still got all of January and February, and about the end of March, it starts to perk up a little bit. And just was feeling kind of down about that. And I was thinking about it, and I was talking to God, as I often do. He probably gets tired of hearing from me. And I was asking him, I'm like, what is your answer during this time of year that's so hard, where we kind of feel isolated because of the weather and everything? I mean, short of moving, right? What is your message of hope in a time like this? And he kind of not, I guess chided is the right word. He kind of chided me, and he's like, you're not alone. Look at all of the people that surround you, physically in your life, and all of the people that you talk to and that you're able to affect online. You're family to them. And I forget that sometimes. I feel this obligation to you guys as your family, but I forget that it goes the other way. I know that if I got on here, and I was thinking about it tonight, I'm like, if I got on here and had some really stressful or bad news and I needed support through that, this community would be there for me. They always have. When I was on Facebook and I had COVID, thousands of people were there for me. And I think when you're on this end of it and you're providing the content and stuff, you forget that is a source of support for you as well. And God just reminded me of that. He's like, don't forget about the army that surrounds you, that is there to support you and encourage you on, and that you guys all kind of share that back and forth. When one of you is having a hard time, the rest of you chime in and try to help that person get through that. And if this is a time of year where I'm feeling kind of down, it's okay for me to share that with you guys and get some encouragement from other people that probably feel the same way this time of year. So that just meant a lot to me that God was like, hey, kiddo, you're not alone. I've put an army around you. As much love and concern as you have for them, they have right back for you. And so that just made me feel really good to be reminded of that, for God to remind me of that. And I had gotten emails this week, from people who were struggling or people who had just seen my story and, were reaching out to tell me what it had meant to them. And it's always interesting when you guys share your stories, because it's always something like, I'm invariably probably once a week. And I feel bad even like feeling kind of lonely or despondent this time of year, because at least once a week I'll get an email from somebody that's like, you know what, I was really down. Often, probably once every couple of months, I'll get one where the person was considering suicide. And they're like, I was just kind of on my phone and your YouTube video came up about your near death experience. And I want to tell you, it changed my life. And it's so funny because you wouldn't think a person that gets emails like that would ever feel lonely or, um, just kind of, yeah, that's a good word, just kind of lonely and despondent this time of year. But it hits me too. I guess I'm human just like everyone else, right? But I was looking at the mail this week, and it was just nice to see people reaching out. Not There were so many people who didn't want anything. They were just reaching out to say, "Hey, I want you to know that you made a difference in my life, and I wanted to thank you for that." And I thought, what a good God we serve, that he would move people to land those in my email just when I needed them. And I just wanted to thank you guys for that, because you guys leave comments and, send emails, and and leave messages here. And it's just such a source of encouragement for me. You just have no idea, some of the weeks where things have been really hard for me, and I've gotten on here and talked to you guys, and it has completely turned my week around. So I just wanted to thank you for that, for being part of my family in that way. Um, Jenny says, my mom went to heaven 5 years ago. I was devastated. I miss her, and I get into near-death experiences because I wanted to know that she was okay. Oh, yes, she's okay. She's totally fine. And I always tell people, don't forget, that person's not gone. It's just bad geography. They're as close as your next breath. You can still talk to that person. That person can still hear you. You have legions of family that you don't even know that are rooting for you in heaven. And I mean that. I mean, they are, how people will say, oh, the whole world's, conspiring against me or working against me. It's really not true. You have legions of loved ones and kind of like angels that your loved ones have partnered up with and have friended up with in heaven, that are watching your life and that are cheering you on and wanting good for you. They're conspiring for your good. God is conspiring for your good. For as much as it can kind of seem like you're getting piled on, remember that, and try to tap into that so that you don't feel so piled on all the time. I know how that can be. Um, oh, Sue, I love you too. That's very sweet. AJ says, I've been wondering if you were okay. The last I remember you saying was that your grandkids were sick. Yeah, I went and I kept my oldest grandson, who's 10, and my granddaughter, while my son took his wife out of town for her birthday. And my grandson was so sick. I mean, so sick, 102.4. Just, I mean, he said to me when he finally started feeling better, he said, Grandma, I've never felt that bad in my whole life. My body's never hurt that bad in my whole life. And I'm like, oh, sweetheart, it's going to get so much worse. There's going to be something far worse than that. I didn't tell him that, of course, but I was like, I'm so sorry that you, suffered. And I went over, and the first night that I had him, I had made him some tea, and I said, sweetheart, let that tea cool off a little bit. Well, he only half listened, and he picked it up, and the cup was hot. And when the cup was hot, he picked it up by the cup instead of the handle. He let it go, and it went, I mean, this is within like 3 hours of his parents leaving, spills that scalding hot tea all over his chest, screams. I go running in there, and he's blood red already. So I get a towel, cold, wet towel, put it on there to run to the store and get Vicks Vapor Rub. If you don't know this, Vicks Vapor Rub will take the sting right out of a burn. And I was sure he was going to blister, and he didn't. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm grandma for 3 hours, and I already have an injured, sick grandchild. So it was quite a weekend for sure. Um, I recently listened to another ND. Oh, Monica says, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for listening. AJ says, I recently listened to another NDE story and he described death as an upgrade. Yeah, so many are afraid. Don't be afraid of death. It's, I don't want to leave because there's things I want to be a part of here yet, but I'm not scared to leave at all. I mean, if this was it, this would be it. And I'd be like, let's go. Um, might the way you go be not great? Sure, I suppose, but it's once you get there, that is all so quickly forgotten. I mean, as soon as you pop out of your body, it's forgotten. So know that. Don't fear it for that reason. Liz says, I found you because I follow the Dead Talks page. Isn't he the sweetest guy? And your reel clip came up and I just had to go listen to your story. It was incredibly similar to another woman's story that I read a few weeks prior. All of these experiences happened within weeks of my mom dying. So to say it brought me peace was an understatement. Yeah, I feel like when people are struggling with loss or whatever they're struggling with, and they'll send me a message and they're like, your video just popped up, or I just was at work and I had I was listening to songs on YouTube and then your video just kind of came into the queue and started playing without my doing anything. And I'm like, I feel like those are little nods from people who are looking after you on the spirit side. They're like, here, you need to hear this, because people always say that it was exactly what I needed to hear. And, not that my message is any more relevant or special than anyone else's, but the timing with which God drops it into people's lives is never lost on me, because people always tell me that. They're like, it was just exactly what I needed to hear when I was going through this thing. Or it gave me such encouragement, or I had lost all hope and had planned out how I was going to kill myself. I mean, I bet I get at least 6 or 7 of those a year. And I always read them to my husband and I'm like, gosh, right when I feel like, okay, is what I'm telling people just bouncing off the walls? Is it helping them? Is it changing their lives? Am I adding anything good? I'll get something like that and I'm like, okay, yes, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. This is what God has put you here for. Um, to share your thoughts and try to encourage people along. And so it's just always so nice for me. Hi, Ned. Um, because it's just, it for anybody, it can. Don't you guys feel like that? Like, even no matter what you're doing, it doesn't have to be anything like this. You're parenting or you're trying to make marriage work or whatever. And it starts feeling like, um, you're pedaling all by yourself. There's nobody on the back of the bike pedaling with you. And it feels like you're pulling all the weight. So I'd want to encourage you, because that happens to all of us. I think people sometimes get the idea that if you've had a near-death experience, all those normal human insecurities and emotions and burdens don't fall on you, or you don't feel them as much. I feel like I feel them more acutely now. Um, I don't. The one thing I will say is that I don't ever feel like it's the end of the world anymore. I don't ever feel like, oh, this is never going to change. It's never going to get better, because I do have that wisdom from the other side of knowing all things pass. Good passes, bad passes. It's just kind of the cycles of life. Um, and so I always tell people, don't forget to remind yourself of that when you're going through something really hard, that this too shall pass. It's true. I mean, it has to. That's just how the spinning of the universe works. Like Paul, I know you've lost your wife and that's been so hard for you. I just can't imagine. Hi, lady, be good. Um, and I'm so sorry that you've lost your wife, because you've shared such wonderful stories about her, about how, it was such a joy to take care of her in her final days. And I think, I got the sense when I first talked to you that she wasn't going to be long. And I felt like you had that sense too, that you knew that the time was getting close. And I'm just praying that last time that you had together, really filled your spirit, because the geography of it now sucks for sure, to have to wait to be with her again and everything. But I hope, I really felt the joy that you talked about when you were talking about how she had changed your life and how she had grown your faith and pulled you in and gotten you involved in the things you guys were involved in, and how special that was to you, and how hard it was going to be when she was gone. And I would just encourage you to push through and continue those things that were important to her, because it'll keep you connected. AJ says, or no, Jenny says, at AJ, I can't get enough of listening to NDE. I don't mind leaving this physical plane, but I can't leave my daughter. She needs, yes, absolutely. And there's stuff you're meant to do here. You're here on purpose, for a purpose, for such a time as this. I always say that. And it's true. And not just for your daughter. There's work you're supposed to be doing here. AJ says to Jenny, I completely understand. I have 4 boys, 9 through 12, that still need me also. My boys are my everything. Yeah, isn't it funny how God, hi, Dead Talks. Isn't it funny how God puts those anchors in for us? He puts those anchors in for us because I think he knows what it's going to take to keep us going on this side and keep us from giving up. And so he blesses us with people and passions that keep us moving forward when it feels like our feet are dragging through cement. It's just true. Lady Be Good says, my mom died a week ago today. Oh, honey, I am so sorry. I was holding her hand for several hours until she passed. You were expecting, Lady Be Good. Wasn't she with hospice? It doesn't make it any easier. I wasn't implying that, but just, it seems like you and I talked about that your mom was with hospice and had passed. I'm so sorry for your loss. Like I said, especially, it's hard any time of year, but it marks the holidays, I think, for years to come. Melissa says, I talked to a good friend today I haven't seen in a year. She gets down and depressed. I read her your message to humanity from God, and she loved it. That's so cool. I need to. It's funny because I had a lady message me this week, and she's like, where can I find your book? And I'm like, I don't know, but if you do find it, let me know. I just cannot get back to it. You guys, if you're writing a book, the best advice I can give you is do not stop until it's done. Because if you stop, you lose momentum, and it's very hard to pick up where you were and have any passion about it because you've left it for so long. I told Don the other day, I said, you know what? I'm just so tired of not having it done. I'm just going to hire a ghostwriter and have them help me through it. And I couldn't just let them ghostwrite. I would have to give them credit because that's just who I am. But I mean, I'm seriously considering it just to get the thing done because so many people ask me about it. If I felt I could find a ghostwriter that could really capture who I am, I would consider it. But I think that's hard. Sure, anybody can write the story, but can they write it, in a way that the person reading it, if you knew me, you'd be like, oh yeah, this is her story for sure. A lot of people use ghostwriters, and just because it's such a labor to get through it. So I'll have to give that some thought. Maybe God will plant somebody in my life, or maybe at least somebody to kind of give me a spur and push me forward. Lady says she had kidney failure. She had 2 weeks, went to the hospital on Christmas night. I am so sorry. Yeah, kidney failure is tough. Work on your book this winter. I know it's not that I don't have time. I have time. I just have no desire. And winter would be the worst time for me to have desire to do it. And I sat down with it not too long ago and started working on it. And I had no passion for it. When I was writing it before, when I wrote the 13 chapters that I wrote, it was writing itself. It was like I could just close my eyes and I would open them and there'd be 8 pages in front of me. And I just felt God moving through me. And I really want it to be a book that God has written through me, that God is shining his light on the stories that I'm writing in each chapter, because it's a memoir. He's shining his light, showing me what to focus on, what to say, what the person reading that chapter needs to hear. Anybody can put the words down and get them accurate and tell the story, but there has to be life to it or it's not readable. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Anybody can put words on a page, but putting life onto a page is a different thing. And so, I've been praying about it. I was asking God, I'm like, so when I stopped writing it was right before COVID, right before I got COVID. And I stopped because there didn't seem to be, I was to the part where I was going to start writing about my near-death experience. So it took me 13 chapters to kind of give people a feel for where I was before that and share some life stories. It's kind of a book in essays. And I got to that 13th chapter, and I remember thinking, okay, I'm to the near-death experience. I have no idea where the story goes after this. And then I got COVID. And so after COVID, I remember thinking, that's interesting. I think there's more story yet. I don't think I can finish it because I don't think enough of the story has played out. And and so now I'm kind of on the other side, and I feel like, okay, I think probably enough of the story has played out that I could finish it. I'm just having a hard time getting the passion to do it. So I will be praying on that. And if you guys would pray on that, that God would help inspire me as to what it is he needs to see on the page from me. Because it's not that I'm not willing. I just can't write heartless words. I can't do it. I've got to be able to feel it. Paul says, agree with everything you said. You're appreciated, and hearing you brings comfort from you and your voice. I'm trying to write our adventure with God and my wife. Paul, that is a great idea. Because what a journey you guys set off on. Paul and his wife were traveling around the country, and Paul, I've got your story right. I haven't mixed you up with anybody. They were traveling around the country and going to each state capital and praying over the state capitals, just for everything that we're going through. So that's going to be an interesting book. And you're in a good emotional, I know it's tough to write right now because everything's so fresh and so painful, but fresh and painful is the best time to write. When you are emotionally entrenched and buried in it, that is a great time to write because it's just so cathartic and it carries through. AJ says, have you heard other NDEs similar to your own in which they end up in darkness or nothingness? I have heard a handful recently, but they don't say theirs lasted as long as yours. I don't listen to other people's NDEs, so I have no idea. I don't listen to other people's NDEs because I wouldn't consider myself an empath. My husband definitely is. I'm as a nurse, you have to kind of be able to compartmentalize. I know you'd think I'd be an empath because I'm a nurse. But I feel like to be a really good nurse, you've got to be able to shut it off, because you have to be 100% in each room. And that's just kind of my personality. And so I feel like having a near-death experience and realizing that we are so intimate, that I am so intimately connected with Paul, that Paul's pain, I now sense that. I feel that. And I worry over Paul. When I knew his wife was sick and I hadn't heard from him in a week, I was like, okay, I wonder if Paul's okay. We talked about it on the podcast. And I'm concerned that if I listen to other people's near-death experiences, that some of what they say might fill in some of the holes in my own, some things that I can't quite remember. And it's really easy to let that become your story. And for people who don't realize that, Neil Donald Walsh wrote a book called Conversations with God. And he used to tell this story about going to this play that his child was in. It's like a Christmas pageant or something. And they were supposed to hold up these signs and it was supposed to spell love or something. I can't remember what. But whatever the way they held up the signs, it ended up spelling something else. I can't remember what the story was. Well, so he's telling this story, and this lady who the story actually belonged to, who had written the story for Christianity Today, messaged him and was like, hey, that's my story. That didn't happen to you. That happened to me. And I mean, like, he had every detail down. Well, his story was that he must have read that years ago and just kind of, it affected him, and he put it away in his file cabinet. And then years later, he just started telling the story thinking it had happened to him. And I thought, oh, what a bunch of baloney. You're just a big old plagiarist. And then I was sitting telling a story one day about something, and the kids were there. And my son's like, that did not happen like that at all. And they all recounted the story differently than I had. And I thought, wow, it is interesting how you can go through the years and your mind can change or add. So I'm really careful not to listen to other people's stories for that reason, so that none of their story leaks into mine. Lady Be Good says, I went to her apartment to clean out her fridge, and she made the kitchen light flicker. When I acknowledged her presence, my body was filled with electric chills. that were warm and comforting. It lasted all day. That is awesome. Wow. Does Paul have YouTube video people can watch? Not yet. Paul's one of us that hangs out here with us. Um, Paul, you don't have a YouTube channel, do you? I don't think you do. If you do, you've not mentioned it. AJ says correct for all elected officials. Yeah, with local people. Right. AJ says, yes, I remember you talking about that. Jenny says, definitely will pray with intention. Your story will be read by many that are afraid of death and have lost loved ones, and will bring comfort and peace and know we come from a place of love. Absolutely. You know, what's funny is so many people, like, I wasn't scared of death before I ever died. And I always was interested, like after I had the near death experience, Ned, who was in the chat here, I don't know if he's still in here. Ned runs a Facebook group for near death experiences. And I remember reading all of the people in there that would talk about how terrified they were of death. And it was this consuming thing. Like, it was something they thought about every day, they might die. And I remember thinking, wow, you're alive, you are going to die. And I had that conversation with somebody. I said, well, look there, lady, be good. She switched over to YouTube. I just read your comment. That's funny. So I was talking to somebody and she's like, I'm just so scared I'm going to die. And I'm like, you are going to die. And as soon as I said it, I'm like, oh, maybe that wasn't the best thing to say. But the reason I said it was this. I have found, so when I would do the terminal weans on our unit, not all of them, but if I was there, a lot of people don't. So what a terminal wean is, we would have somebody on the ventilator who either wanted to come off and just die naturally, or the family was making that decision. But sometimes the patient would make it. And so I would talk to them the night before, and, they would write, or, we would get through it. They would do their hand signs or whatever. And I would say, okay, we're going to turn the ventilator off on, what are you scared of? And so, they would be like, I'm scared it's going to be painful, or I'm not going to be able to breathe, or I'm scared that my family's going to be, forever traumatized by watching me die. And so we would go through those things. And I'm like, okay, with fear, what I find is that people tend to have this thing that they're afraid of. And so they're like, I'm afraid of death. And that's as far as they get, right? They're just afraid of death. They're just terrified of death. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to die. So let's talk about that. And they've never done that. They've never taken it past, I'm terrified of death, And so then I pushed this person. I'm like, well, you are going to die. And I kind of wondered what she would say next, And she's like, well, it's a terrible thing to say. And I'm like, no, it's true. You are going to die. We're all going to die. You have an expiration date from the moment you get here. And she's like, well, that's just awful. I'm just so terrified of it. And I'm like, what about it terrifies you? And we started talking about it. And she's like, well, not being alive scares me, And I'm like, okay, well, what about it scares you? Are you scared you won't go to heaven, or do you believe that there's heaven? And she's like, well, what if there's nothing? And I'm like, well, if there's nothing, you won't be aware of it. So you're good there. And I'm like, but what if there's something? What if there's heaven? And what if you can feel assured that that's where you're going to be, and that that's part of your destiny, and that this is just a really small part of your existence? You're an eternal creation. You existed before this. God thought you up in his mind. You existed. And then you're born, and you existed in a physical form. And then your physical form becomes useless and is cast away. And you exist in spirit form for eternity. So don't sweat the death thing, because there's no such thing. You're either alive in your body, or you're alive as a thought in God's mind before you get here, or you're alive in body from the moment that egg is fertilized, or till the moment that your body becomes useless. And then you're super alive in the spirit. You're far more alive out of your body than you are in it. So there's not any reason to fear it, because it is incredible. I've never felt so alive as when I finally got out of my body. So definitely don't fear that. Good, so funny. Definitely will. Okay, I got that one. This seems to be the place to be. You guys are so cute. Military put feelings in a garage to deal with situations. No, my wife was on Facebook, had a ministry. Oh, awesome. Are you continuing that, Paul, or is that something you need to take a step back from for now? Yeah, it is funny how we learn to compartmentalize. You know, I was a very adult little kid at a young age. You know, just you know, I don't want to say anything to cast dispersion on anything in my life, but I just had to be way more grown up than a kid my age should have been. And so I've always kind of felt like this little adult and kind of felt like I had to, you know, kind of keep my feelings. I remember Don and I were on a date one time and we were in a fight. I can't remember what we were fighting about, something stupid, I'm sure. And he pulled over at the bank and I was like, I wanted to get out of the car, right? And so I'm going to get out of the car. And he's like, get back in the car. What are you doing? You can't walk home from here. There's not even a sidewalk. And I was just mad. I didn't, you know, I wasn't saying anything really. And he's like, do you have any feelings at all? Um, you know, I just feel like you're so pent up. And in that moment, the wall broke, the dam broke, right? And I screamed at him. I'm like, you want feelings? Well, you got him. And I just let him have it. I mean, I went off on him. And he's like, oh no, shh, shh, shh. Get in the car, get in the car. I'm like, oh no, you wanted feelings. Well, here they it kind of broke me that day. And so now it's kind of all out there. So blame Don. MMC says, love you and your personality. Thank you for sharing your story and your time. Thank you for listening, especially with this still raspy voice. I did the tea all day trying to get it a little more solid for tonight. Lady Be Good says, Penny, if you could reincarnate after your next death, would you come back here to Earth again for another life? I feel like it would depend on what I was coming back to do. So like if that were a thing for sure and I could come back, yeah, I think if I felt like I could come back and I could um realize my purpose sooner, it, you know, because I went through so much, and I think that's part of how you figure out your purpose. You go through a lot. But you know, I went through so much with the divorce and with all those years just spent totally walled off and not attached to, or not, I don't know, not really feeling anything. I just lived in my head. Um, if I could know who I am sooner and come back and you know, have a family again, you know, choose a husband knowing what I know now about who I am in Christ, that would be something, because I would love to come back and give children that I would have that mother father thing that I wasn't able to give them this time around. Isn't that, gosh, that's poignant. Um, but I would love to do that. I would love to, you know, pick a good man the first time and raise children with a good father in the home and feel that, experience that, you know, watch those kids come up under the nurturing of two loving parents who were invested in them, and see my life play out that way. Isn't that funny? I didn't see that coming, but but that would be something. I would love to parent children not from a broken home. That that would be incredible. Um, Love it. Did Don say, tell me how you really feel? Oh no, he was trying to rein that crap in as quick as he could because we're out in public. And I'm not one to like, you know, create a scene or anything like that. I mean, I'm silly. I'll get laughing and stuff, but I, even if I'm upset about something, like if someone's going to start a fight, it's going to be Don every time. Just because he needs to get some animus out of his system. Doesn't even generally have anything to do with me. He's just pissy. And so he starts a fight to get it out of his system, and then he regrets it because I don't generally start a fight. I just kind of internalize it and work through it. And I'm like, well, you know, it is what it is. Things are good. You know, I'm not going to piss and moan about this one little thing that's driving me crazy. But then he'll pull that crap and then, you know, then of course it all comes out. It's like, have you been harboring that against me for some time? And I'm like, yes. So know that we're very human. We fight, you know, we're not this perfect couple. Jenny says, you and your husband sound like my husband and I when we argue. So funny. Boy, I tell you what, you know, he's so funny. I know when a fight's coming because I can just tell by the way he's acting. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's not going to be happy. And like, if we're going on a trip, he has to have a fight beforehand. I don't know if it's like this stress, this anxiety thing because he's leaving home and all of his stuff or what. But invariably, if we're going on vacation, we're going on a trip, we're going out of town for something, that man will start a fight with me. And so when we're getting close to the trip, I'll say to him, I'm like, okay, we're leaving in 2 days. So if you've got something you need to get off your chest, because it upsets me so, because I don't like to fight. And he'll push and push and push until I will fight. So by that point, I'm exasperated. It's not as bad as he used to be about it, but he still gets a wild hair. And so I'll say to him, look, we're getting ready to go out of town. I'm going to call this whole trip off if you're going to start a fight with me. And so, like, we went to Nashville once. We got in a huge fight in front of the Batman building over something totally stupid. So the Batman building is right outside the Ryman Auditorium. I think that's right. And there was a hockey playoff or something there that weekend. And we were just kind of sightseeing, and then we were going to go back and do this Segway tour, which I highly recommend. The Segway tour was the best part of the trip to Nashville because some guy was an idiot and kept crashing his Segway and flying over the handlebars. It was incredible. It was worth the price of admission. But we're standing out on the sidewalk, and this hockey game is letting out, and all these people are filling the sidewalks, and he's standing right in the middle of the sidewalk, and I can see he's looking at the Ryman Auditorium, and I'm standing there talking to him. We're not fighting or anything. It was tense, though, because we were on a trip, and, he's got to pull out his inner jerk at that time. So anyway, he'd be so upset if he heard me talk. Why do you talk bad about me online? I'm like, I mostly talk good about you. So these guys were on the sidewalk, and this one guy wasn't paying attention. He's looking around and stuff, and I can see that he's going to run into Don. So I grab Don and I pull him toward me. Oh my gosh, you would have thought that, that I called him a big old girl or something in front of a bunch of guys. He loses it. He's like, you have no respect for me. You just grab me and pull me out of the way like a little kid. And we're having this, he's doing this in front of all these people. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. And so I'm like, look, I'm going to the Segway thing. You just go back to the hotel room. I've paid for the Segway tour. I'm going on it. So I take off, right? He catches me. And then we start fighting, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, that guy was going to run into you. Oh, so you disrespect me by pulling me out of the way? And I'm like, okay, Don, next time I'll just let that big old oaf plow you over. Like, when you have pulled me, it was just ridiculous. And he just will do that. I don't know what it is. It's just one of his things. It's better now because I call him on it ahead of time. And I'm like, hey, we're going on a trip. Are you going to start a bunch of crap with me on day one? But anyway, yeah. So I want to say I ended up leaving him there on the street, and I went to the place where the Segway was, and I don't know how he found it because I had made the reservations for it, but he shows up behind me like a few minutes. I'd already been sitting down and had signed in and everything. And, he shows up, and I'm just, oh, I'm mad. Right. And once he gets me mad and we have the initial, yelling match, then he's good. He's done. He doesn't want to fight anymore. Well, it takes a lot to piss me off. So now you have poked and poked and poked, and I can't just turn it off. I can't just not be mad. And then he gets all upset, and he's like, well, I don't know why you got to just keep beating me up. And I'm like, oh no, you wanted to fight. You started this. Now you got to listen to it until I work. Because if it was up to me, we wouldn't fight about stuff. I hate that kind of tension. But anyway, so they did the whole Segway thing. We get going. I have to tell you about the Segway thing now. We get going on this Segway thing, and they made clear to us, wherever you are in line, that's where you ride. You don't be swerving in and out. Don't be speeding ahead. Don't be cutting in front of people. Basically don't be an idiot. So there's this woman, she's there with her husband. And I could tell, like, during the training thing where they show you how to stop and start and turn and all that, this guy had to be like faster and better than everyone. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's the one to watch. This guy's trouble. So we get out on the road, and the lady that we had that was our tour guide was incredible. They took us this was like 3 hours long or something. And she took us to all the spots. I'm just ridiculous. She took us to all the spots, and instead of telling us just the basic stuff about the spot, she would give us the dirt on the spot, like the rumor, like how many kids this statue guy supposedly had, and all of just really interesting stories, right? She had a lot of color commentary, I guess. So we're going down, and we get to this park. I wish I could remember what that park is. We get to this park, and that's like the halfway point where we're now going to turn around and start going back. And this guy gets a wild hair up his butt, right? And he decides he's going to start speeding in and out, right? So he's riding up alongside of us, and we're getting ready to go across this from the sidewalk to sidewalk across a side street, right? And he's not paying attention. And so he darts out in front and doesn't see that this lady's walking, and he's going to hit the lady. And so he hits the telephone pole. He crashes. He's got his wife's backpack on his back, right? And she's like, Bob, or whatever his name is. Oh my God, stop. And I thought, this poor woman, he's an idiot like this wherever they go. And she's just mortified, right? She's just doing damage control. So Bob, or whatever his name was, what was his? I can't remember. Anyway, he hits the telephone pole. He goes sailing over the handlebars. I mean, I was sure he was hurt. And then rolls into the street. The Segway rolls into him. He didn't have her bag latched all the way. So like tampons go flying everywhere. It's great. And so he gets up. The lady stops. He's all skinned up. He's bleeding and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a nurse. Am I going to have to, render aid? And so I go over because he hit hard and he seemed okay, had good movement and everything. And I'm like, please be careful. So we get back on and we continue riding. He does a couple other stupid things. So now we're on the street where we have to return the Segways, right? And I'm like, what? Why can't you learn? Why are you so stupid? And, his poor wife, she's probably hoping that he'll just crash and burn at this point. We're riding on the sidewalk, and he decides he's going to go to the left, and the buildings are on the left. We're on that sidewalk going that way. And I don't know if you've ever been to Nashville, but there's like the buildings that are on the ground level, and then there's some bars and stuff that are down below the street level, and there's stairs that go down to those, right? So he's getting out of wherever he's supposed to be. I don't know what he thought he was going to do, and he doesn't realize that staircase going downstairs is there, right? And I see what's going to happen, and I'm like, oh gosh, watch this, Don's behind me. And he's warn him. And I'm like, I'm going to warn him, he's an idiot, he's got it coming, right? So he darts out, and within seconds he sees that he's headed down he's going to go down these stairs. So he swerves, he hits another light pole and flips the thing, like puts a huge dent in it. And I yell 10, right? And Dom's like, honey, you really shouldn't have scored it. I'm like, are you kidding me? The first time, no, okay, you're just stupid and you're a guy and you're not making good decisions. But the second, third, fourth time, oh yes, you deserve to be scored on it. And his poor wife wasn't even offended that I graded. But it was the best. It's the only the only other story from that trip was when I made it was like January or February, and it was a really warm weekend, like the 70s. And so I decided we needed to get out of town. So there's a place in Nashville called the Nashville Hostel, and I had never stayed at a hostel. I had always wanted to be that person who took a, what is that called? Like a year off before you go to college, to travel Europe, backpack Europe. I'd always heard about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be that kid. And then I wasn't. And I'm like, oh, I never got to stay in a hostel. So I make reservations at the Nashville Hostel. And I don't know anything about hostels. This is like, I don't know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I don't know. I mean, we're in our 40s, Don's in his 50s. And I book us at a hostel. And so we get there and he's like, okay, where are we staying? And I said, we're staying at the Nashville Hostel. And he's like, we're what? I said, we're staying at the Nashville Hostel. He's like, do you know what a hostel is? And I'm like, no. I'm like if you go backpacking across Europe, there you can stay in hostels. He's like, right. Do you know what they are? And I'm like, I don't know, like trendy hotels. He's like, no, sweetheart. A hostel is like a dormitory type situation. We're going to be sleeping in a room with a bunch of people we don't know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a terrible idea. That's such like, okay. I'm like, it'll be all right. So we get there, and there's 4 bunk beds in the room we're in, and they're all full size. And so luckily, there wasn't very many people that day, so we had that whole room to ourselves. And I'm like, see, it's gonna be fine. We were even able to lock the door, and because Dom was like, well, my wallet's in here, and your purse is in here, and these people could rob from us in the middle of the night. And I'm like, oh, lighten up, Francis, it'll be fine, right? And so we're in there. We can't sleep because there's kids running up and down the hall, teenagers or college students, I guess. And he's like, I can't believe you booked us at a hostel. And so everything's good. We get up in the morning, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go take a shower. I get all my stuff. I got my towel, I got my little bag and everything. I'm wearing PJs. I go down the hall, and it just didn't occur to me that there were true co-ed floors. Like, I figured there was still a men's restroom and a woman's restroom. Well, there is a co-ed restroom, and I don't know this. And so I walk in, and as I walk in, this 20-something-year-old kid walks out of, and I didn't have my nurse hat on. Like, if I have my nurse hat on, like, figuratively, I'm really good at not reacting, but I wasn't ready for this. So this 20-something-year-old guy walks out of the shower. He's totally naked, and he's wrapping the towel around him. And I'm like, oh no. And I turn around and I walk out thinking I'm in the wrong bathroom. And so I look at the bathroom, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a boys and a girls bathroom. Oh my, I can't go in there and shower with 20. I don't have a 20-year-old body anymore. There's no way I'm getting all this out in front of 20-year-old boys. So I wait till he leaves, and then I get in there, and I shower super fast, and I put my clothes on. I'm still wet. I'm trying to pull clothes on in there because I'm not walking out without clothes on. Um, and I walk out, right? So I go back to the room, and Don is sitting with the door to the room open on the floor with his guitar, and he is white as a ghost. And I'm like, hey, you're not going to believe what just happened to me in the bathroom. And he doesn't say anything. He's just got this stunned look on his face. And I'm like, hey, the bathrooms are co-ed. And he's like, I didn't do anything. I was just sitting here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I was just sitting here. I mean, I didn't look. I looked right at their foreheads. I just stared right at their foreheads. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, I was sitting here, and I was just playing my guitar, waiting for you to come back. And these 2 girls walked down the hall, and just their panties and their bras. I mean, like young girls, like maybe 19, 20 something. And he's like, and I tried not to look, but immediately I looked, and then I was like, oh no, don't look. And so I was looking straight at their foreheads. And the girl said to me, she said, oh my gosh, you play, she stops to talk to him, right? And Don's like, trying not to look at her boobies because, he's a married man and all that. And he's super shy. He didn't go to any of his high school dances because he was too shy to ask somebody out. Just crazy because he's so cute. But he's like right back in high school, right? And so he's like staring at this girl's forehead, and she's like, oh my gosh, I love that song. How long have you been playing for? And she's from someplace else. She's got an accent. And he's like, I couldn't, I didn't look. And I'm like, okay, well, what'd you tell her? He's like, I I mean, they were in their underwear. I couldn't say anything. I just looked right at her forehead, like right between her eyes. I just stared at, and I'm like, honey, that's like weirder than if you had just looked at her boobs. I'm like, she's walking around in her underwear. She stops to talk to a 50-year-old guy. You'd like think she doesn't expect you to look at her boobs. Anyway, the whole thing ended up being really dramatic for Don. And Don, poor Don's like, I don't know why God had to put boobs in such a visible spot. Like, you should have hit them under your armpits or something. Like, it's something that we've got to focus on every time we go out. It's just, not looking, not looking. I'm like, is it this really? Is it that big of a problem for guys? Because I don't ever have to say to myself, don't look at that guy's crotch, or don't look at that guy's, never crosses my mind. Not once when I go out. But apparently guys are much different, and this is a struggle for them. He's going to be mortified. It's a good thing he doesn't watch any of the videos that I do, because he would just be mortified. Paul says, that sounds like me. Oh no. Jenny says, I've walked into men's bathrooms many times by mistake, and then when I realized it after I've done my business, I've been mortified. MMC says, I'm dying with laughter. You're killing me. Lady Be Good says to Jenny, "Me too, but the men don't care. They think it's funny." So when Don's dad died, I'm gonna end with this story because I promised him I wouldn't go over an hour tonight. When Don's dad died, this isn't funny. I feel like a horrible person. That's not the funny part. Don's dad died, and we both got, when we went down for the funeral, we both got stomach flu. And I'm talking brutal, brutal stomach flu. We had a camper out on dad's property, but the plumbing wasn't hooked up. So we were having to run to the house. It was so bad we couldn't make it to the house. So we had to rent a hotel room so we could be closer to the bathroom. So we are so sick the night before. And a family member brings us these little edible things, right? And he's like, "It'll settle your stomach. It's the only way you're going to get," because we had just been puking, sitting on the toilet with buckets in our laps, kind of sick. And so he brings us these edibles, right? And so Don eats like a quarter of one, and he's just gone. I don't know what he was talking about. Something about I don't know, something like deep and philosophical, right? Um, and and I eat like a quarter of one, and I'm fine. And this is me as a person. Like, if I'm drinking a glass of wine, and I can't drink hardly anything. Like, I could not drink 8 ounces of wine without you'd have to carry me to the car. But I'm fine until I'm not. And I mean, I am totally fine, and then I'm not. And it's just sudden like that. I don't know why. It's a weird, I don't know, metabolism thing with me. So I eat a quarter of this gummy, and I'm fine. And so I'm sitting there talking to these family members, and I'm fine. And the family member is like, "Go ahead and try another quarter of one, and see if that helps." And I'm still super pukey nauseous. And so I eat that quarter of a one. And then those two people are like, "Okay, well, we're going to go to our room. Good night. Hope you feel better." And so I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I'm not fine, right? And I'm convinced that someone is yeah, you can see it, right? I'm convinced that someone is trying to break in the room to kill me, and I'm laying there and the bed is spinning. And I'm totally freaked out about that, and I'm like, "Okay, there's what is the treatment for spinning bed? I can't what foot on the floor, that's it, foot on the floor." So I put my foot on the floor. I got my arm, I'm holding onto the nightstand, and I'm like, "Oh god, I hope those people do," and I'm crying. I'm like, "Oh, hope people don't get in the room and kill us. I just know they're gonna kill us." And I'm trying to wake Don up. He's gone, right? He's not gonna wake up. And then suddenly I remember that I had eaten this edible thing, and I'm like, "Oh, oh, no one's gonna kill me. I'm paranoid. That's what this is. Oh, thank God, I'm just paranoid, right?" So then I figure out that I'm hungry. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so hungry because we've been puking for 2 days, right?" I'm like, "I gotta get something to eat. What am I gonna do? I'm so, so hungry. Oh, I'm so hungry." And then I'm crying because 'cause I'm so hungry, right? I'm like, "I don't understand why anybody likes this substance. This is not working out for me at all." And I'd never done anything like that before. And so Don had kind of like emptied his money, his pockets out onto the little table that's in there, like the desk, in the hotel room. And so I take up all this change and this money, and I've got it like, in my hands like an idiot. And I go out of the room, and let me think how this went. I've got the key card to the room, right? I get out of the room. I don't know where Wolf is tonight. He doesn't always come on the near death experience nights. So I go out of the room, and the door closes, and I've got the key card, and the door closes, and I'm like, "Oh, oh no, I can't get back in the room. I'm locked out of the room. What do I don't have my phone. I can't get in the room." For some reason, I thought I needed the phone to get in the room. I've got the key card, right? So now I'm like, "Oh crap. What am I going to do? I got to be able to get back in the room. I'll be out here all night. Where will I sleep?" And I'm totally freaking out. And I'm like, "Oh, I've got to find these two other family members, but I can't remember what room they're in." So I decide I'm going to go from room to room and listen at the door and see if I can hear them. And then if I can hear them, I'll knock on the door, and then they'll help me get in the room. So I go to the first door and I listen, and I'm like, I don't think those are my people. Go to the second door, I listen. I'm like, no, that's not them. Go to the third door and listen. And as I lean my ear, and I'm leaning on the door because I'm messed up, right? As as I do that, the person in the room, the guy, opens the door, and I fall into the doorway, right? And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're not so and so." And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, I can't find them, and I can't get back in my room." And the guy's like, obviously annoyed, so I need to go away, so I leave, and I decide, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go see if I can find food because 'cause I'm starving." And I go to the elevator, and the elevator doors open, and there's a guy in there, and it scares the crap out of me, and I scream, which scares him, so he screams. He's like, "Oh my god, what's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I didn't expect anybody to be in there." He's like, "In the elevator?" I'm like, "I know, it's so scary." And so he runs out of the elevator, I run in, I go downstairs, I find the vending machine, and I don't know how long I stood at the vending machine, but I realized at some point that someone was talking. And I remember thinking, "Who is that talking?" And then I realized it was me. I don't know what I was saying. I know I was having some discussion about what to get, right? And so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you can't if you talk to yourself, people are gonna think you're messed up. Don't talk to yourself." So I'm standing there and I'm like, "Okay, there's Reese's. Oh, I do like Reese's cups, and there's Doritos. Oh, salty and sweet is good." And I realize I'm doing it again, and I'm like, "Oh shit, I'm still talking to myself." I get the candy. I got, like, some kinda chips, and I think I got Reese's Cups or Reese's Pieces or something. I wanna say I got a pop, right? So, I'm holding my shirt. You know how little girls hold their shirt up, and they'll, like, put stuff in their shirt and carry it around? This is how I'm an idiot. This is how I'm carrying stuff around, right? And then I can't remember where the room is, and it doesn't matter because I don't have my phone, so I can't get in the room because I don't know why a key card wouldn't work, which I do have. So I go outside because the people who were at the front desk are not at the front desk. And I go outside and there's a bench out there and there's two people who look like they work there and they're standing there or they're sitting on the bench smoking. And so I got all my candy and my pop and stuff in my shirt and I'm confused and and I'm like, I can't get in my room. And the guy's like, "Oh, honey." You can tell, right? And I'm like, I I left the room. I went out because I was so hungry, and then I couldn't find my family. I don't know where they are, and I can't get back in my room because I don't have my phone, and I don't know where my room is, but I got all this candy, and I got pop. He's like, "Oh my gosh, let's see if we can look and figure out what room you're in." So he takes my key card, and he's like, "Okay, you're in, this room," and he's like, can you get up there yourself or do you need me to help you?" And I'm like, I might need help." And I'm like, "I don't have my phone, so I can't get the door open." And he's like, I can get the door. Thank God he wasn't like some psychopath. He says, I'll get the door open for you." So then I go back and I go in the room and I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and I'm still messed up, right? So Don's still asleep. I decide I'm gonna go down to the breakfast thing, right? And there's this lady sitting, so there's you walk in, there's all these tables, then there's like the tables that are closest to where all the breakfast stuff is set up. And there's this lady sitting there who looks exactly like my next door neighbor. And I think that's who it is, right? So I go over to her and I'm like, "Christy, oh my gosh, what are you doing in Michigan? Hi." And she's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, "Christy, it's me, it's Penny." And I get that sensation like someone's talking and I don't know who they are or what they're saying. And then I realize it's me. And she's looking at me like I'm nuts. And I'm like, "Oh, oh, wow, you look just like my neighbor." And then I turn around and leave. So we go, all of this to get you to hear. This is the end of the story. So we get to the funeral and none of us are puking anymore except for Don. Don is still looking really bad and he's dehydrated and he's supposed to sing and play guitar. And so he goes missing. No one can find him. And so I go and I find, his sister and I find our son and daughter-in-law. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen your dad? I can't find your dad anywhere. He's missing." And no one can find him. We search the church, and this is the church that his dad pastored when he was alive. We search the church. We can't find him anywhere. I'm like, "Where could he have gone? The car's here. Maybe he walked up the street to get something for nausea." We just didn't know where he was. And so my phone rings. And so I'm like, "It's him." And I just joined. Was this a dream? Oh no, this all really happened. And so I answer the phone. I'm like, "Hello?" He's like, "Babe." I'm like, "Honey, where are you? We're all supposed to go into the church for the funeral now. Everybody's waiting for you. Where are you?" And he's like, "I'm in the ladies' room." I'm like, "Why are you in the ladies' room?" He's like, "I don't know, but I'm in the wrong bathroom. I need help." So I'm like, "Donnie, your dad is downstairs in the ladies' room." He's like, "Why is he in the ladies' room?" I said, "I have no idea." He goes, he gets him out of the ladies' room. Don somehow, sick as he was, manages to pull it together, sings the song and everything. We get done. And I'm like, why were you in the ladies' room? He's like, well, when I went to church here, that was the men's room. They've obviously changed something around. And I'm like, well, how did you figure out you were in the ladies' room? He said, well, I was in there. And of course, he's digestively ill at the south end, right? Of course, it couldn't be something just delicate, like he's in there peeing, right? And he said, I'm in there. And he's like, my stomach's just rolling and I'm doubled over. And then this lady comes in and I'm like, well, how did you know it was a lady? And he says, well, because I heard her pee. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, yeah. I mean, I could tell she was a lady because of how she peed. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, you guys pee different than we do. It sounds totally different. And I'm like, no, we don't. I'm like, you're telling me that you could tell the difference between a man and a woman solely by the sound of the peeing. And he's like, yes, I could. So I told this story one night on my other channel and Wolf was on. Lady Be Good, you'll love this. And he's like, oh yes, you can definitely tell the you can definitely tell the difference. With women, it's more of a deluge. And I'm like, a deluge. And so I told Don, I'm like, hey, I was telling the story about you being in the wrong bathroom. He's like, oh my gosh, do you have to tell those stories online? I'm like, they're really good stories, babe. And I said, Wolf says the reason that he can tell the difference between a woman and a man peeing is because when a woman pees, it's more of a deluge. Would you say that's accurate? He said, that's very accurate. I don't know why I didn't think of that word, but that's exactly that's it. That's all I've got. That's the story of Nashville. Things going wrong at the hostel. Lady Be Good agrees. Well, it's funny because now everywhere, if I'm in a public restroom, I'm like, oh yeah, that does sound. I never noticed my whole life. It's so funny because I think people like hear my near-death experience and they think I'm like this really deep person, who's just got this great world wisdom to offer. I know I got deluge. That's what I've got. And don't eat gummies when you're in a hotel out of town for a funeral, especially if you've never ever done that sort of thing before in your life, because you're going to get locked out of your room if the people who are trying to get in don't kill you. And even though you've got the key card, you won't be able to get back in because you don't have your phone. And that is the moral of the story. That's my great spiritual wisdom for you tonight. I hope it helped. Paul, I hope it gave you a laugh. I know you've had just a really trying time. I'm not making light of it at all. But just know that we are praying for you. I'm so glad I could bring you guys some laugh with my stupid life. I have to tell you guys some of the kids' stories at some point. I'll save those so that we've got something to talk about at another time. But I will be back. I try to keep these to an hour. I'll be back Saturday at 9. And if you like the ridiculousness that is my podcast, I do a current events podcast on Friday nights on Rumble. It's not on here. Because I couldn't say half of the stuff I want to say on YouTube. I'd get censored, but it's on Rumble on Friday nights at 9:30 Eastern. And then we're here Saturday nights for the Tea Talks at 9 o'clock Eastern on Saturdays. Lady Be Good says, have you gained more interesting knowledge, insights about the afterlife that was not part of your original experience? I think probably it feels like most of that came back with me. Like there was knowledge that was given to me that I can't just verbalize to you, but something will happen and I'll remember that. I'll remember whatever that bit of knowledge was. And it, like when I came back and we pulled into the driveway and I could feel the tree loving me. I remembered that all of this creation that is here, God made to show us his love. So trees and flowers and birds and all these things are God's expression of beauty and his way of loving you, of showing you every day that he loves you. And I had forgotten about that until we got in the driveway. And this was this tree that I had been trying to get Don to cut down because it had gotten damaged. And I felt the tree loving me. And I looked at it and I'm like, you can't cut that tree down. I can feel it loving me. And here I'd hounded him to be cutting it down for like a year. But I'm like, her name is Lola. She wasn't a showgirl. If you're under 50, you probably won't get that. But she ended up coming back, and she's a beautiful tree after being horribly struck by lightning and damaged by wind. And she's just kind of this living testament to me to, that God can take any broken thing and make it beautiful again. So I think I learned that, you know, that was something I learned there that I didn't remember and that God brought to my memory. So it's more like that than it is new spiritual epiphanies. It's the stuff I learned there that gets brought up because of a situation generally. I hope that answers your question. Lady Be Good says, I'll try to see you next Friday. I hope you do. And if not, you can always catch it on replay. Paul's still rolling from laughter. It just brings me so much joy to know that I've brought you some laughter tonight. That makes me feel really good because I've fretted about you all week. So just know that I'm praying for you, Paul. We all are. You're loved here by people who you don't even know because we're all connected. See, you remember Lola, Monica. All right, let me close this out in prayer, guys. Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for this opportunity to just do life with your people. That we could all be together and we could share each other's sorrow and the funny things that happen in our lives, and we can lighten each other's loads just a little bit because it's tough on this side. And Father, I would just pray for Paul going forward. Things are really fresh for him with the loss of his wife, and for Lady Be Good, who just lost her mom. And I just pray that you would comfort them and that they would be able to feel that they're in your arms and under your wing. And I just pray that you would bring these loved ones to their remembrance with your beauty, with nature and people that you would put in their lives to speak a kind word and remember their loved ones to them. And I just pray that their loved ones would be on the other side and would make these little meaningful contacts, just reminding them that they still exist and that they're more now than they ever were. And that there will be a day when we're all reunited in heaven, Father, and that we'll be with you and be in that love. And I just, again, thank you so much for this platform to be able to share with people. And I thank you for silly stories and ways to lighten other people's lives just a little bit. And I pray for everybody who watches this podcast and anybody who will come to watch it in the replay. I pray that you make it a blessing to them. And we just thank you for who you are and for your sacrifice in your Son. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. Much love to you. Much love to you, Paul and Lady Be Good. Oh, go ahead. Shoot me another one, Lady Be Good. If it's something you want to say privately, just shoot me an email. And you guys, I have a website if you're trying to find me. I'm really slow on my answering my mails back because I get a lot of mail. But on my website, you can find all of my contact information. It's witthealthcoaching.com. I think that's right. Let me put it in the thing for you guys. I think that's right. Oh, tell me it can't. Here we go. Let me get the link for you. Copy. And you can, there's the protocol for COVID there. It also works for flu. I put it in the Rumble chat. I don't think I can put it in the YouTube chat, but just go to Witthealthcoach. It's not coaching. Witt, healthcoach.com. There's my PayPal link there if you want to support the channel. That's always appreciated. There's a lot of expenses that go along with podcasting. But there's a link there if you want to support the channel. There's the protocol that you can download, and there's my email if you need to get hold of me personally. Just be patient with how much time it takes me to get back with you. It's Witthealthcoach, I think Witthealthcoach at Gmail. Hold on, let me look. It's on the website. If for some reason I can't find it on here. Witthealth. Yeah, Witt, Witt, health coach, all one word, at gmail.com. And you can always find it on the website, which is witthealthcoach.com. Is it Witthealthcoach? Yeah, witthealthcoach.com. And so you can always find me there. And I will be praying for you guys until we meet again. Thank you so much for joining me for Saturday Night Tea Time. Much love to all of you. Know that I'm praying for you always.